We begin this morning with the Lagos State House of Assembly's confirmation of 22 commissioner nominees and rejecting 17 out of the 39 sent by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for screening. Mudashiru Obasa, Speaker of the House, who presided over the day's sitting, said the confirmation followed rigorous and detailed screening of the nominees by an ad hoc committee led by the Chief Whip of the House, Fatai Mojid. Obasa hailed the committee for its effectiveness and urged the confirmed nominees to always remember that they are in office to serve the people of the state and not individuals. Also, some Islamic clerics had earlier protested against what they tagged alleged lopsidedness, in their words, in the list of commissioner nominees submitted to the Assembly by the governor. According to the clerics, 8 Muslims made the governor's 39-man list, while the rest were Christians. All right, Kay. Rumble in Lagos.
Yes, I think there's always a need for a balance. I haven't actually studied the list to know whether there's only 8 Muslims, but it's always been said in the past that Lagos has been skewed towards having more Muslims in government and in cabinet and close to the former governor Asiwaju and all that. Than Christians, and it seems some Muslims are now complaining that it's skewed more towards Christians. But it's extremely important that whatever you do in Lagos, Lagos is the melting pot, is the potpourri for the entire nation. And it's home for all. Some people argued about whether you are a Lagosian or you're not. I claim to be a Lagosian. But the least anybody can say is when you're resident in Lagos, Lagos becomes your home. So for that reason, if this is your home, this is where you pay tax, this is where you contribute to its development, then it's home for you. And it means the balance has got to be there for everybody, whether you're Christians or Muslim or even traditional worshiper or whatever it is. You should get a chance. So those who are complaining about that, then let the governor balance it. Secondly, on the issue of those who were not confirmed by the State Assembly, honestly speaking, Rufai and Ayo, I cannot see a reason why someone like Professor Akin Abayomi will not be confirmed. As far as I'm concerned, the best education commissioner in Lagos State so far has been Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo. I haven't seen anybody who was prepared for office as much as this woman, and I haven't seen anybody who has done so much, working really hard for Lagos State to help to improve education in the state. And then the State Assembly, led by Right Honorable Speaker, what's his name now? Obasa. I can't imagine why she will not be confirmed. I can't see any reason. If you're looking for a technocrat that has the understanding of education sector in Lagos and in Nigeria, why would she not be confirmed? Why will Professor Akin Abayomi not be confirmed? The former commissioner for information, Lagos State, someone that we know has been a consummate professional in the industry, like Omotosho, Gbenga Omotosho. He should be confirmed. There's no reason not to confirm him. And there are others. Lekan Fatodu, I know, who has been in the industry, working in the UK and other parts of the world and coming to help the governor with SDG goals. Lekan Fatodu should be confirmed. There's no reason why he should not. So there are others like that. So the question will be, what's the reason? Let the State Assembly help us understand why these individuals were not confirmed and why some other people were confirmed. It should be clear. This, at the moment, is not clear to us, and we want that clarity. So I yield the mic.
Thank you.
So here we go. I do not discount any voice or, people speaking and saying there must be religious balancing in any cabinet. To a large extent, these are always the arguments we've posited, even as regards the national scene. When some people were trying to push a Muslim ticket forward for presidency, we kept on telling them that let's be fair. And I'm excited that those that pushed the Muslim ticket now and are saying, oh, there's no big deal about it. Now in Lagos State, too, they are calling for a need for religious balance. So when it's done otherwise, people should see how it feels, really, So I'm happy that they too have seen what it feels like now. And that's that for that. Secondly, I don't know what's going on between the House in Lagos and this commissioner has not confirmed, but it smacks of a lot of politicking going on. There's something going on, and I'll tell you why. Yesterday, a television station had an interview during their news at 7 p.m. with the whip of the House and also the chairman of the screening committee of these people. And the journalist specifically asked him, what was the reason behind these people not scaling through the screening system? He had no answers. He said it's not about him. He said it's about the committee that was set up to screen them. The journalist persisted. And after he said he had no answers, all of a sudden the phone line went off and the show ended. I've also taken our time, to be able to look at the thing, what's going on, reach out to a couple of people out there and see what's going on, but no concrete answers yet. I think the Lagos State House of Assembly will have to tell us what we don't know. And they will have to exonerate themselves, because a lot of people are already saying this looks like a lot of politicking. Like Mr. K had enunciated, the stellar qualities of those people. Yeah, take it or leave it. You might have your grounds against them. You might not agree with them all the time. But you can't argue with the fact that Professor Akin Abayomi did a very wonderful job in his fight against COVID-19 in the States. I think Professor Abayomi, in his fight against COVID-19, had COVID more than anybody. I think this is his 6th or 7th time he's been in and out, fighting COVID personally while he still administers the COVID reaction in the States. Is it Mr. Gbenga Motosho that in his own right would always try to also defend? Or is it the education minister, education commissioner, like you said, that had to quickly adopt a method during COVID to still educate the people through homeschooling and show the power of radio in terms of information dissemination? And the other people that served with Governor Sanwo-Olu in his last administration, that showed some very veritable qualities. So why all of a sudden? And the question should be, if they were good enough to be screened to serve with Governor Sanwo-Olu the first time, what has happened all of a sudden that has made them not good enough to be screened this time around? So the Lagos State House of Assembly will have to throw more light on this, and we'll see how it pans out. But most importantly, we want the full complement of the commissioners to be out, all these bottlenecks sorted out, so that we can go back to the work of administering Lagos. Because there's a lot of problems on ground. For instance, I would like to see when the new transport commissioner comes on board, so that we'll talk about this blue rail line. We ought to be using things like the rail line now, that there's so much increase in fuel price. At least that will be able to ameliorate the movement challenges of people. The state of the roads too. There's a lot that needs to be done in Lagos, and we need to get all through this Lagos State Assembly screen of commissioner bottleneck, so that we start to face the real problems that bedevil all of us in Lagos. Eko ni baje.
Team. All right. Okay. Let me. I just following from where Kay and Rufai have spoken, especially with the Lagos confirmation of commissioners. First of all, let me say congratulations to all those who were confirmed. I see some promising names there that should make Lagosians excited. People like Dr. Dolapo Fashawe, who's managed the environmental space in Lagos State quite well. She was DG of the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. And then we also have people like Tubosun Alake, who also had served in the digital space, digital and tech space, as SA in the previous administration. We've seen some people returning as well. And so some quality names there. Now, in terms of the 17 who weren't confirmed out of the 39, of course, this sparked a lot of reactions because people were quite surprised, especially when you see names that already have been mentioned. And add to that, Sam Igube, who was Minister of Economy and Budget Planning. Because when you look at the track record of these men and women, you would then wonder, and this is why it would give rise to perhaps politicking being a factor in their non-confirmation, in terms of non-confirmation of these distinguished men and women. I'd like to center on, very importantly, on Professor Akin Abayomi, as has already been stated, and I must lend my voice to this. Because for many people who live in Lagos, and indeed being the epicenter in many parts, and an example from other states to follow, during the management of COVID-19, it is important that we are able to put the right people in the positions so that we get the best out of it. You could hardly fault Professor Akin Abayomi. I mean, you look at his track record, his experience, his both professional and academic experience, you wonder why he was exempted. And again, like just to emphasize, if they were suitable to have been given the nod in the last administration, what changed? What went wrong? What I would assume is that based on their work, on the work they've done, they would judge them based on that and see if they deserve a second term. It's almost a no-brainer that a man like Professor Akin Abayomi deserves a second term. However, to be fair and to be balanced, it's important for the Lagos State House of Assembly to let us understand why. There must be a reason. In the event at the national level, when the three ministers designate were not given clearance to go ahead, it was said that they needed to do further checks with the DSS and further security checks. So even if it wasn't watertight in terms of the reason, there was a reason given. It must be said that what is the reason, so that we do not lose our best heads because one person is aggrieved or there's a political misunderstanding somewhere, and so we lose good heads in the cabinet. So I believe that the Lagos State Governor, who would work with the State House of Assembly, would come together to address these concerns by Lagosians. I mean, look at the former Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, a woman who's distinguished herself in the education space in Nigeria, not just in Lagos State. A number of people there. So it will be great to find out why that has occurred. But again, like I mentioned, another thing I must say is that we often say that there should be a rigorous process in screening commissioners or ministers. It shouldn't just be a take a bow and go. So in that regard, it would have been praised in terms of them doing their work, but it shouldn't then be as a result of vendetta or politicking why they haven't been allowed to go ahead. So the Lagos State House of Assembly should come clean and tell us why, the reason behind that. And if it's valid, then so be it. Move on to the next story. The head of the Wagner mercenary group has reportedly been killed in a plane crash outside Moscow. Russia's aviation authority says Yevgeny Prigozhin was on board. Also on that list was Dmitry Utkin, one of the founders of the Wagner Group. 7 passengers and 3 crew members were on the private jet flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg. The remains of the 10 bodies have been recovered from the site. The crash comes 2 months after Prigozhin led a failed mutiny against the Russian armed forces. Russian authorities have launched a criminal investigation into the incident.
The main investigative directorate of the Investigative Committee of the Russian Federation opened a criminal case on the fact of an aviation accident in the region on the grounds of an offence under Article 263 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, violation of the rules of safety of movement and operation of air transport.
И эксплуатации воздушного транспорта.
U.S. President Joe Biden says he's not surprised at the news of the former Wagner chief's death.
I don't know for a fact what happened, but I'm not surprised.
Do you believe?
There's not much that happens when Russia is not behind, but I don't know enough to know the answer.
Unfortunate news reaching us from Russia. Okay, a take on the story.
That I'm not surprised. At least I was not surprised. I was not shocked. I knew, or I believe, I don't know. I believe that this was going to happen. The moment you pull the tiger by the tail, you know you will get bitten. Something will happen. It's not going to go without some kind of repercussion. There will be implication, as we say. There will be implication. And what do we know about this? We know that, yes, it was alleged that he got on the plane with 9 or 10 other people, and it was also alleged that the plane crashed. There is a source that's also alleged, yet to be proven, that the aircraft was shot. It was shot at, and that was what crashed it. It wasn't an accident. It was a case of an attack, according to some sources. And that attack is not unexpected. But there's also allegation. There are also conjectures and people saying that there's a possibility that he wasn't even on the aircrafts. The man knows how to be very cunning, and he has 9 lives, and that's part of the reason why he's being an excellent quote and unquote mercenary or leader of mercenaries. And he has his brutal side and his difficult, challenging side. So there's a possibility that he wasn't there, and some people have said that nobody should be surprised if we find Prigozhin in some part of Africa in the next few days or in the next month or so. But also, we know that the person he's dealing with is one who is extremely ruthless. The president of Russia is a very ruthless person from all that we have seen. When you look at the number of those who have shown dissenting voices or aired dissenting voices against him, and we know what has happened to them, either in terms of being poisoned and things like that. So this is not new. It's not a shock to anybody. And if America say we didn't know what happened, I have a feeling that they just keeping quiet because they feel this is not our war, this is not our battle, so we will not engage with it. Let's Russia deal with its own. But it's something that we know that it was going to happen at some point, so it's not shocking to me at all. The only thing is, Russia has got to realize that it cannot continue in this way. If it wants to be recognized as a nation, not necessarily democratic, run your style of government. It is fine. I'm not one of those that say every nation must be democratic. Run your own style of democracy. If what suits you is a kind of dictatorship, benevolent or not benevolent, as long as it makes your nation great, then run it. Just be careful so that you're not destroying the people you said you're leading. Don't destroy their lives. Don't manipulate them to the point where their lives are destroyed. That will be the counsel. So Russia, do your thing. And I think that's the message from America as well by saying we don't know what happened. I'm sure they're investigating to confirm.
All right.
Okay, so what are the facts of the matter? Number one, Novaya Gazeta, one of the biggest papers out of Russia, released a manifest stating the people that were on that Embraer jet. It was said that the Embraer jet was traveling 25,000 meters above sea level, was traveling straight and came down. There are multiple reports that probably was shot down by a Russian defense system, but there's also another contrary report that says if it was shot down by a defense system, you should see smoke blaring out. There could have been an internal explosion when the plane came down. Because if you shoot a plane high up there, you definitely shoot one of the hardest parts. There's also a report that says that the wing number on the plane corresponds with one that Yevgeny Prigozhin had used in the past. And if you also check the manifest, and I'm going to also talk about the implications of this on Africa, there's another name that we don't talk too much about, which is actually the original founder of Wagner. In fact, when he was in the Russian service, his call name was Wagner, and that's Dmitry Utkin. It was Dmitry Utkin that originally founded Wagner from this town of Asbest, where they have a lot of asbestos mining going on in Russia. And Yevgeny Prigozhin came in because he had the clout and he had the closeness to Putin. As we all know, was Putin's original chef. So the big conundrum is, yes, is Yevgeny Prigozhin dead? I'll say I don't know. The fact said his name was on the manifest. I've not seen an empirical forensic report about his death. Even when you see that, you cannot be so sure. As Putin always fought his enemies, yes. Marsha Grassen, that wrote a book called The Unlikely Face of Putin many years ago, was interviewed recently, and she was talking about the fact that Putin has a thing for dates. So if you check the date yesterday, 23rd August, makes it exactly 2 months after Yevgeny Prigozhin tried to march into Moscow. Has he always fought his opponent? Yes. As he talked about the fact that traders will be discarded, the likes of Yevgeny Prigozhin, yes. We cannot forget the case of Mikhail Khodorkovsky, that was one of the richest men in Russia with Yukos at some point. But today, Mikhail Khodorkovsky is not as much as he used to be before. We cannot forget the case of Sergei Skripal. We cannot forget the case of Alexander Dovzhenko. We cannot forget the case of other journalists like Anna Politkovskaya and some other people that have shown one level of dissent or the other. Alexei Navalny, you can see where he is today. We remember what happened to Boris Nemtsov, and the list goes on and on and on like that. But could he have done this to Prigozhin? Yes, the Americans will tell you that anything that happens in Russia happens at the say-so of Putin. Ex-KGB official, we know that. But the dynamics is different. Wagner is already sort of like an arm of the Russian government to be able to intervene in countries around the world through the use of mercenary force. They've intervened in some countries in the Middle East and all of that. How it correlates with what is happening in Africa is the fear that it might lead to a big struggle within the Wagner ranks. And that's why I kept on mentioning Dmitry Utkin. If the founder and the co-founder had died in that plane crash, then definitely there's going to be a problem as regards leadership in Wagner. And it feeds off to what Wagner is doing and the Wagner occupation in parts of Africa. So some analysts have said, yeah, it's not going to affect what is happening in Africa. I think it's going to affect, because you still need that sense of leadership. And if the number one and the number two man, Utkin and Prigozhin, had actually died, then what befalls them? Will it probably be mopped up? Will the Russian state now have to do a lot of control? Yes, a lot of people have argued that Wagner is heavily funded and given weapons by the Russian state and all of that. Dialing back, we all know how this fight started. Was when Yevgeny Prigozhin started calling out the likes of Gerasimov and Shoigu about the war in Ukraine, saying they were not giving them enough armory to fight in Bakhmut. And Wagner became the toast of a lot of people because of what it achieved in Bakhmut in the war. So let's see how all of this pans out. I don't want to put a card on it yet and say, oh, this has happened. We still want to get more investigative reports coming out of Russia. The Civil Aviation Authority needs to give us more reports as regards this. But I wouldn't, put my finger on what comes out of Russia. It's quite iffy for me. But this is a developing story, and definitely this is definitely going to change the dynamics. And in the coming days, we'll know more. Absolutely.
It's a developing story, and has already been speculated, even though people have said the manifest of that plane that was shot down has Yevgeny Prigozhin there. It's not a certainty because apparently there's a report as well that there's another plane that landed around the same time as well in terms of a private jet. And until there's a conclusion on the investigation, we would not be able to say for a fact. But news reaching is that he's been confirmed to have been on that plane, and some people have said that they were able to identify the body of the 62-year-old. In terms of the US's response, President Joe Biden actually said that there's almost nothing that happens in Russia without Putin being aware of it. And so even though he couldn't comment on it, he was he was almost certain that President Putin was aware of it. Also, Ukrainian president had mentioned that the plane coming down was a signal by Putin ahead of elections that he would not take any disloyalty, especially from the elites. And this is what he had said in terms of when the mutiny happened 2 months ago, that it was a case, or a serious case of disloyalty, of going against betrayal. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Disloyalty, betrayal, and has already been said, vendetta, it almost runs in the blood of President Putin. But I think beyond just revenge, if that's the case, again, subject to full investigation, it must be said as well that it is just stamping the authority in terms of who is really in charge. So the Wagner forces made a lot of noise in terms of going against the Russian military defense, and now it seems as if they've responded with this taking down of not just Prigozhin, I think that's quite important to note, but also the founder of Wagner Forces, Utkin. So this has again taken the headlines, and Putin has shown by force that he is in charge, and no one dares to challenge him or betrays him without consequent actions. As has been mentioned, this will then begin to ask who then would take on the leadership of Wagner forces following the death of Prigozhin. Is it going to be, are there people earmarked for this? How will that affect their presence already in Africa? What experts have said, though, is that it will have little or no effect in terms of their, territorial interest in Africa and their inroad into Africa. So that still continues. Also, there's a war, there's an issue, a coup situation in Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, which Wagner forces have been said to, support these countries. Also says there shouldn't be much of or a significant change in that. So the next few days will be very interesting. First of all, looking forward to the outcome of that investigation. Second of all, in terms of the real course and what really went on behind this might take months or years to truly uncover, because we might get a story, but the truth at the end of the day is what hopefully we'll be able to get out of this particular story. But again, unfortunate news, but the Wagner forces and Prigozhin himself has not been known to show mercy to their opponents or to people or to countries where they've been to.